Hey everyone, welcome to the Chilling Hour, where the stories never let you sleep. My name's Dylan Mercer, and I'm 32 years old. I never believed in ghosts or curses or anything supernatural until last summer. What happened to me at the Blue Pine RV campground in Northern Oregon changed that forever. I've tried to tell myself it wasn't real, that maybe I imagined it because of exhaustion or something in the water. But every time I close my eyes, I see it again. The shape in the woods, the eyes in the window, the smell of rot. I was on a solo trip across the Pacific Northwest, living out of my old RV, a 1989 Winnebago Chieftain. I bought it off a retired couple for next to nothing. It rattled when it hit 60, and the fridge made this high-pitched hum that drove me crazy, but it felt like freedom. I wanted quiet. No city noise, no traffic, no people. Just trees, lakes, and stars. I found Blue Pine RV Camp on an old travel blog. It wasn't a big place. Just a dirt road leading to maybe 10 RV slots, a few scattered picnic tables, and a small office cabin that doubled as a store. The owner, an old guy named Walter, had lived there all his life. He told me his parents started the campground back in the 60s, though business had dropped off after the accident. When I asked what accident, he just grunted and said, "People forget how to respect the woods." Then he handed me a map, circled Site 7, and told me to keep the noise down after dark. That first night, everything felt perfect. The air smelled like pine and rain. I parked the RV under a thick canopy of trees far from the other campers. There were maybe 3 other RVs there, an elderly couple near the lake, a family with 2 kids, and some guy with a Harley and a tent. I grilled a couple hot dogs, drank a beer, and fell asleep to the sound of crickets. Sometime around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of tapping. It was faint at first, like fingernails on metal. I sat up, listening. The sound came again. Tap, 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 right against the side of the RV. I grabbed my flashlight and looked out the window, but all I saw was trees swaying in the wind. I told myself it was just a branch brushing against the siding. I went back to bed. The next morning, I noticed something strange. There were smudges on the window, dark, greasy streaks, like someone had pressed their fingers there. Human fingers. I wiped them off, thinking maybe it was condensation, but the marks had shape, 5 long prints, uneven, like the hand that made them was crooked somehow. When I mentioned it to Walter later that day, he just looked at me for a long time and said, "You're at Site 7, right?" I nodded. He sighed. "If you hear anything again, don't look, don't open the door. Just stay inside until morning." I laughed it off, but there was something in his eyes, fear, maybe, that unsettled me. That night, I parked my RV exactly the same way, locked the doors, and drew the curtains. Around midnight, I heard the tapping again, but this time it was louder, like someone was dragging their nails across the door. I grabbed my flashlight, heart pounding, and whispered, "Who's there?" No response. Just the wind, then came a whisper. It was soft, almost too quiet to hear. "Let me in." I froze. My throat went dry. The voice sounded like a woman's, strained, broken. I told myself maybe one of the other campers needed help. Maybe someone was drunk or lost. Against every instinct, I walked to the door and pulled the curtain back just enough to peek. There was no one there. Just beyond the tree line, though, I thought I saw movement. A flash of pale skin, long hair, and something crawling on all 4s. I shut the curtain fast and backed away. The whisper came again, but now it was inside, echoing through the RV. "Let me in." I remember running to the bathroom and locking myself in. I stayed there until the first light of dawn filtered through the window. When I finally stepped out, the RV door was wide open. The ground outside was covered in mud, but there were no footprints, just drag marks, like something had crawled on its belly, circling the RV again and again. I packed my things that morning, ready to leave. As I was disconnecting the sewer line, Walter walked up. He looked at me like he already knew what I'd seen. I told him I was done, that I wasn't staying another night. He nodded slowly and said, "It's her. She always comes back to that site." "Who?" I asked. He hesitated, then said, "A woman named Laura Haskins. She went missing here in '74. She and her husband were camping right where your rig's parked. Cops found the husband dead near the lake, neck broken, but never found her. Some say she drowned herself. Others say she never left. I should have left right then. I started the engine, but it sputtered and died. I tried again. Nothing. Battery was fine, gas was fine, but the ignition just clicked. Walter offered to help, but I told him I'd fix it myself. I didn't want to be near anyone. I needed to think. By late afternoon, thunder rolled in, and the sky went black. Rain poured down in sheets. I sat inside, flashlight in hand, waiting for morning. But around 1 a.m., the lights flickered and went out completely. I heard footsteps on the roof, slow, deliberate steps that made the whole RV creak. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then something started scraping along the vents, a metallic screech that set my teeth on edge. I aimed the flashlight at the ceiling, but it didn't help. The sound moved from one end of the roof to the other, then stopped right above me. Drip. Something wet landed on my arm. I looked down. Dark, sticky, blood. I jumped up and pointed the light at the ceiling vent. What I saw through the slats wasn't human. A face, pale and bloated, with eyes like marbles and a mouth stretched open in a silent scream. Hair clung to her face in clumps, soaked with water. She was staring straight at me. I fell backward, knocking over the table, and scrambled for the door. It wouldn't open. The lock jammed. I hit it again and again, screaming for help. Then I heard her voice, inside the RV, whispering behind me. "Why did you take my place?" I turned around. She was standing there, dripping wet, in a torn white dress. Her skin was gray, swollen, her fingers blackened like they'd been in the water too long. She smiled, a wide, horrible grin that cracked her cheeks. "Please," I begged. I didn't mean to. She lunged. I don't remember what happened next. I woke up hours later on the ground outside the RV, rain still falling. The door was open, my flashlight shattered. Inside, everything was soaked, but nothing was broken. She was gone. Walter found me the next morning. He didn't ask what happened, just helped me get the RV started, like he knew it would work now that she'd had her fun. I drove straight out of that place and never looked back. A few weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I searched for Laura Haskins online. Found an old newspaper clipping. It said her husband Gerald was found dead at Blue Pine Campground. His neck had been snapped. Laura's body was discovered 2 months later, face down in the lake, hair tangled in the reeds. The article said she'd been pregnant. I don't know what she wanted from me. Maybe she thought I was him. Maybe she just didn't want anyone taking that spot again. But sometimes when I stop for the night and shut off the engine, I hear it again. That faint tapping on the side of the RV. And every time, I whisper the same thing Walter told me. Don't look. Don't open the door. Because I know she's still out there, waiting for someone else to park at Site 7. Story the end.
Story number 2.
My name's Derek Lawson. I'm 36 years old, and this story, what I'm about to tell you, happened 3 years ago, right here in the United States. I've traveled across the country plenty of times, camping in all sorts of places, forests, deserts, small-town parks. But nothing prepared me for what I saw that summer at Timberline RV Campground in Northern Oregon. I had just gone through a divorce. I needed time to clear my head, so I bought an old RV, a 1998 Winnebago, and decided to take a few months to live on the road. The open highway was supposed to be my therapy. I'd spend my nights parked under the stars, make a fire, cook beans, and just be. But that summer became something else entirely. It was late June when I pulled into Timberline. The campground sat deep in the woods, far off Highway 26. No nearby towns, no cell service, just a gravel road winding through miles of thick Douglas firs. There was something both beautiful and unsettling about it. The way the trees seemed to close in on you, almost like they didn't want you to leave once you came in. At the entrance stood a crooked wooden sign that read, "Welcome to Timberline, where nature is alive." Those words would haunt me later. When I arrived, the campground looked nearly empty. Maybe 4 or 5 other RVs were scattered around the clearing. The camp host, an older woman named Marjorie, came out of her trailer to greet me. Her face was deeply lined, her gray hair pulled tight into a bun, and her voice had that strange, shaky warmth that felt both kind and unsettling. "Only one rule here, sweetheart," she told me as she handed over a faded pamphlet. "Keep quiet after midnight. The forest likes its rest." I laughed, thinking she meant wildlife or something. But she didn't laugh back. She just looked past me, out into the trees, like she was remembering something. That first night was uneventful. I set up a little fire, cooked some dinner, and had a beer under the stars. Around 11, I turned in. I remember falling asleep to the chirping of crickets and the faint hiss of the fire dying out. But around 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound, soft footsteps outside my RV. I thought maybe a deer or another camper walking by, but the footsteps circled my RV slowly, pausing by the door. I held my breath. The handle on the door jiggled lightly. I reached for my flashlight and whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Just silence. And then faintly, a low humming sound, like someone singing under their breath. I peered out through the blinds, but all I could see was the faint outline of trees in the moonlight. I thought maybe I was half asleep, maybe it was just the wind. Eventually, I forced myself back to bed. The next morning, I noticed something strange. Muddy footprints outside my RV door. Bare footprints, small, child-sized. I asked Marjorie if any families were camping nearby, but she shook her head. "No kids here, sweetheart," she said softly. "Not anymore." That answer didn't sit right with me. That evening, I walked around the campground. Most sites were empty, and the few RVs that were there looked abandoned. Dusty windshields, overgrown weeds around the tires, no sound of people. It was like everyone had just vanished. When I got back to my spot, I saw an old man sitting by a fire a few spaces down. He waved me over, so I joined him. His name was Cliff, a retired truck driver. He'd been staying at Timberline for a while, he said, though he never said exactly how long. He leaned close and told me something that made my stomach twist. People don't stay long here. The forest don't like visitors. He said that at night, there were voices that called from the woods, sometimes sounding like people you knew. Some campers would follow those voices and never come back. I asked if he'd ever seen anything himself. He looked into the fire, his eyes watery from the smoke, or maybe from something else, and whispered, "Every night, you'll see them too." That night, I locked my RV tight and kept my flashlight beside me. Around 2 a.m., I woke up again, this time to knocking. 3 slow, heavy knocks on the side of my RV. I didn't move. My heart pounded so loud I thought whoever, or whatever, was outside could hear it. Then came the humming again, that same low tune from the night before, only clearer. It was a woman's voice. Against every instinct in my body, I looked through the window. A woman stood just beyond the firelight, thin, pale, with long hair hanging wet over her face. She wore a tattered white nightgown that looked soaked through, like she'd just climbed out of a river. Her skin was grayish blue, her hands black around the fingertips. She was humming, swaying slightly, staring at my RV. Then she smiled, not at me, but right at the door, like she knew I was on the other side. I backed away from the window. My throat went dry. I grabbed my car keys and debated turning on the engine, but I couldn't move. I just sat there, frozen, listening to her humming fade into the woods. By morning, she was gone. I walked over to Cliff's site, but his fire was out and his RV door was open. Inside, everything was trashed. Papers scattered, his clothes still on the bed. No sign of him. I ran to Marjorie's trailer. She opened the door just a crack. Before I could say anything, she whispered, "You should go. Before tonight, she knows you've seen her." "What the hell is going on here?" I shouted. "Who is she?" Marjorie looked terrified, like even saying it might summon something. "There was an accident," she said quietly. "A family drowned in the river that runs behind this place. The wife, she never left. Every summer she calls out looking for her boy." My blood ran cold. The footprints, the humming, the woman. I didn't waste another second. I went back, packed my gear, and got ready to leave. But when I turned the key, my RV wouldn't start. The lights flickered. The engine clicked, dead. And then I heard it again, from the trees, someone whispering my name. "Derek!" It wasn't the woman's voice this time. It sounded like a child. I froze, staring into the forest, and saw a small figure standing between the trees. A boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, barefoot, wearing old-fashioned overalls, his skin pale as paper. He tilted his head and said, "Can you help me find my mom?" My body locked up. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Then behind him, that same woman stepped out of the shadows, her head tilted, her eyes black and hollow. She reached for him, and when her hand touched his shoulder, he crumbled into ash. I screamed, slammed the RV door shut, and kept trying the ignition until finally, by some miracle, it roared to life. I peeled out of that campground so fast I almost lost control on the gravel road. As I looked into the rearview mirror, I swear to God, I saw her. Standing in the middle of the road, her mouth open wide, that awful humming twisting into a scream that sounded like metal scraping metal. When I finally reached a gas station 20 miles down the road, I jumped out and told the clerk everything. He just stared at me. "Timberline?" he said, frowning. "That place burned down 10 years ago. Nobody's been up there since." I told him that wasn't possible. I'd just been there. He handed me an old newspaper clipping. It showed the ruins of the campground, charred, blackened trees, and the headline read, "Family of 3 found dead after RV fire. Mother believed to have drowned trying to save son." I left the gas station shaking. My RV smelled faintly of smoke for days afterward. That night, when I finally stopped at another campground, I locked up tight again. But just as I was about to drift off to sleep, I heard it, soft, distant, but clear. That same humming, coming from the woods. And when I looked at the side mirror, I saw something written in the condensation on the glass, letters traced by a small finger. "Help me find her." I didn't sleep at all. Since then, I've avoided camping altogether. I sold the RV a month later. The guy who bought it called me 2 weeks after. He said he found muddy footprints near the door one morning, and that night he swore he heard a woman singing outside. I told him to burn it. He laughed, but I could tell he didn't sleep easy after that. And me? I still wake up around 3 a.m. sometimes, hearing that faint humming in my head. I'll open my eyes and swear I see the outline of a woman standing by the foot of my bed, dripping wet, watching me with those hollow eyes. Every night I tell myself it's just my imagination. But deep down, I know better. Some things you don't just drive away from. Story the end.
Story number 3.
My name's Michael Turner. I'm 34 years old, and this happened in the summer of 2019. I swear on everything I have that what I'm about to tell you is real. I used to think ghost stories were just campfire tales people made up for fun. But after that night at the Black Pine RV campground in Montana, I don't sleep the same. I was on a solo road trip. Just me, my RV, and a map dotted with national parks. I had quit my office job that spring after a burnout that nearly wrecked me. I wanted peace, mountains, rivers, quiet. I thought the open road would clear my head. For the first few weeks, it did. I drove through Idaho, then into Montana, where I found this campground near Flathead Lake. It looked perfect online. Remote, quiet, surrounded by forest. When I got there, it was early evening. The camp host, an older man named Roger, came out of a small cabin near the entrance. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, eyes sunken, voice hoarse. "You're the only one tonight," he said with a forced grin. "Take Site 12, right near the trees." I asked if business was slow, but he just gave a strange laugh. "You could say that," he muttered, handing me a map. "Stay close to the lights, all right?" That was weird, but I didn't think much of it. Site 12 was tucked near the tree line, with a broken lamppost flickering nearby. The forest loomed dark and silent behind my RV. I set up, cooked dinner, and sat outside with a beer, watching the sun bleed orange through the pines. It was peaceful until the quiet started to feel too quiet. The woods around me had no sounds, no crickets, no wind, not even the rustle of leaves, just dead silence. Around 9 p.m., I noticed something else. Faint music, like an old country song, drifting from somewhere in the woods. At first, I thought it was another camper, but Roger said I was the only one there. The sound faded, then returned louder, closer. It was scratchy, like coming from a record player, and the lyrics were distorted. I could only make out a woman's voice singing something like, "I'll be waiting when the night comes." My chest felt tight. I turned off my lantern and stood still, listening. The song stopped. Then from the darkness beyond the trees, I heard laughter. High, female laughter, but not normal. It sounded warped, like someone mimicking a laugh without understanding what it meant. I bolted into my RV, locked the door, and pulled the curtains. I told myself it had to be some prank, maybe teenagers messing around. I sat at the dinette, heart pounding, trying to calm down. After about an hour, I started to feel stupid. I decided to check outside again, just to prove to myself there was nothing out there. When I stepped out, the forest was silent again, but the flickering lamppost now glowed steady, like someone had fixed it, except I hadn't seen anyone. The air smelled strange too, sweet and rotten, like decaying flowers. I looked toward the trees, and that's when I saw her. A woman stood at the edge of the forest, maybe 20 feet away. She was wearing a white dress that looked old, like from the 1950s. Her hair was long and wet, hanging in clumps. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at me with this blank, hollow expression. I froze. I wanted to shout, but no sound came out. Then she smiled, slow and unnatural, like her face wasn't built for it. Her mouth stretched wider than it should have. I stumbled backward into my RV and slammed the door. I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I pulled down the blinds and grabbed a flashlight, shining it through the window. She was gone. I didn't sleep at all that night. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps outside, bare feet slapping softly on gravel. They circled the RV, slow and deliberate. Then something brushed against the side, and I heard that same eerie laugh again, right outside my door. When the sun came up, I drove straight to the camp office. Roger was there, sitting on the porch, smoking. He looked up at me like he already knew. "You saw her, didn't you?" he said quietly. I didn't answer right away. My voice was shaking when I finally said, "Who the hell was that?" He sighed, rubbed his face, and looked toward the woods. Her name was Lucy Dean. Used to camp here with her husband back in the 60s. They say she drowned in the lake one night after a fight. But her husband told folks she just walked off into the woods. Never found her body. Every few years, someone reports seeing her. Always by Site 12. I wanted to leave right then, but I felt this need to know more. You said every few years? What happens? He flicked his cigarette into the dirt. People vanish. Cars left behind. Tents zipped shut. Food on the fire. Like they just disappeared. I didn't want to believe it, but when I looked at his face, I knew he wasn't lying. I packed my things in a frenzy and got the hell out. But here's where it gets worse. About 20 miles down the road, I stopped for gas. While I was filling up, I looked in my side mirror, and my blood ran cold. There, in the reflection of the RV's back window, was a smudge. A handprint. Wet. Feminine. Like someone had pressed their palm against the inside of the glass. I dropped the pump and ran to check, but when I opened the back door, there was nothing. The window was dry, but the smell, that same rotten sweetness, lingered. That night, I stayed at a different RV park, one filled with people, lights, and noise. I figured safety in numbers, right? But around midnight, I woke up to music again. That same old country song, faint and scratchy, coming from outside. I peeked through the blinds, and my stomach turned. There she was, standing under the streetlight, staring straight at my RV. Her dress was soaked again, dripping dark water onto the asphalt. The streetlight flickered, and she moved closer. Not walked. Moved, like she slid forward without taking steps. I grabbed my keys, threw the RV into drive, and sped off without even disconnecting the power line. I didn't stop until sunrise, when I reached a crowded rest area off the highway. I sat there shaking for hours, trying to convince myself it was stress, fatigue, something rational. But when I finally got home to Denver, I found something that destroyed any chance of denial. On the inside of my RV's bathroom mirror, written in long streaks of condensation, were the words, "You found me." I hadn't used the bathroom. I hadn't taken a shower. The glass was completely dry otherwise. I sold that RV 2 weeks later. The guy who bought it called me a month after, asking if the music thing was normal. I hung up and blocked the number. It's been 6 years now. I've tried to move on, but sometimes when I drive past campgrounds or hear old country songs on the radio, I still get chills. Once last year, while staying in a motel in Arizona, I woke up to faint humming outside my window. A woman's voice, low and familiar. I didn't look. I didn't move. I just lay there, praying it would stop. You can think I'm crazy if you want. But if you ever find yourself at Black Pine RV Campground and someone offers you Site 12, don't take it. Don't stay past dark. And if you hear that song, no matter how curious you get, don't follow it into the woods. Because Lucy's still out there, waiting for someone to take her place. Story the end.